Okay, so we're going to talk about the Jewish marriage and wedding. We'll talk about traditions, halakha, or Jewish law, planning, and spiritual meaning. And it's going to be serious because there's a lot to cover. Basically, this is for future brides and grooms, or also if you're already married, I think there's a lot of important information here that you can glean from. But I've also designed this for rabbis and potential future officiants and other people who may serve as halachic guides, as poseks for their community, since this is going to be on our YouTube channel and whatnot. It's also, I'm also trying to address wedding planners and event coordinators who might not understand the elements of a Jewish wedding and who would benefit from this kind of information if they're helping out with that. And also for parents and family members and guests, there'll be some sections in there that is appropriate for even wedding guests. If you ever attend a Jewish wedding, what to expect, what your role and responsibility is in the wedding, etc. And also just for anyone who would like to understand the symbolism and the elements of a Jewish wedding, but also a Jewish marriage. So what is the spiritual meaning of a Jewish marriage? This is a Torah and Jewish view on love and purpose. There's a beautiful quote in Genesis Rabbah, this is the Midrash on Genesis, which says, a man without a wife, a woman without a husband, and both without the Shekhinah are incomplete, okay? Which means that there's something missing when you are not married. And if you are married, but you don't have God in the middle of your marriage, there's also something missing. So what is the purpose of marriage? It says, of course, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, that God created man in his image, male and female, he created them. So God's image was made through both male and female. And all throughout the Bible, we see God being described in both masculine and also feminine terms. Some of the adjectives that are described, used to describe the creator, sometimes they are female in nature. And there is a midrash that says that when Hashem made man, well, actually, I'll say the midrash later. But also there's also a relationship between Hashem and Israel. And he says about Israel, and I will betroth you to me forever. I'll betroth you to me in righteousness, justice, kindness, and compassion. I'll betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. And Jewish men say this verse. Is it the whole verse or just part of it?
Just what you just...
Exactly what I said, okay. When they are wrapping tefillin for shacharit. So I personally believe that there's no real purpose for marriage. There's no reason for marriage unless you believe in God. It is a Torah-based biblical institution. So if you don't really believe in God, I don't know that it's necessary. You know what I mean? It is a institution based on emunah, on faith. Now, the Talmud in Sota 17a, it teaches that when husband and wife are worthy, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, dwells between them. Now, when we are not worthy, the Shekhinah is knocking at the door. It is trying to dwell with us. That is the goal. That should be our goal, and it's also Hashem's goal. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, it says that it's not good for man to be alone. So I will make a helper corresponding to him. Now, this word helper and corresponding are the Hebrew words ezer. Ezer, you may know that word with, the name. There's a name Ezra. There's a prophet Ezra, right? And Ezra, so Ezra comes from the word which means help, right? Ezer. So we say there's a term that we say in Judaism, we say Bezrat Hashem. That means by the strength or by the help of Hashem. So it means strength or help. Or else is that word used? I can't think of it right now, but so Ezer, so helper. Now it also says kenegdo. And here that's translated as corresponding, but it actually more literally means opposite. I will make him a helper that is opposite of him. And that can mean many things. There's many explanations for that. Opposite, you can think of, a man and a woman, how they're different, right? They're different, yet they fit together. They're not exactly the same biologically. Also emotionally, we're different, but in that difference, we complement each other. Sometimes it's not good for a man and woman to be exactly alike because they're too much alike, they don't balance each other out. Like I don't think I'd do good with someone exactly like me. I'd probably drive myself crazy, which is why I think me and my son, my oldest son, drive each other crazy a lot, is because I feel like we're very alike. So he has to marry someone who is calm and, so it's perfect. It's perfect. Okay, we're not gonna debate how she's like right now. Anyways, and then so it can mean it can mean opposite, meaning different. Like what I am, he's not. What he is, I am not. And this is how we help to complete each other. It's not necessarily just a cheesy phrase. It's actually true in physical and spiritual ways. Opposite can also mean like face to face, right? If you're standing opposite each other, that means you're facing each other. Usually that's what it means. And this is what a couple does when they enter under the chuppah. They're standing face to face with each other, facing each other. But also spiritually, it can mean that they are challenging each other, right? When two opponents, they fight, they are also facing opposite each other. Opposite can also mean you're reflecting each other, right? When two people communicate, you often reflect each other's body language. You reflect each other in the conversation. When you try to make sure you understand what the other person is saying, you try to say things that reflect what they're trying to communicate to you, right? Putting it in your own words, things like that. And just complimenting him. And some of our sages say that, I think this is midrashic, I don't know if this is always true, but our sages say that, I'll just say sometimes, I'll add that word sometimes, if you are doing Hashem's will, then your helpmeet is standing opposite you to support you and lift you up. But if you're not doing Hashem's will, the sages say that your wife is there purposefully to challenge you and even oppose you, not just to make you upset or annoy you, but to make you better, to help you to be better in life. Question. Okay.
You think Job's wife was there to oppose him when he was at his lowest?
So someone was saying, was Job's wife there to oppose him when he was married? Well, she certainly did that. And she helped Hasatan. She was helping Hasatan do his job, and Hasatan was only doing his job. And so, I don't think she needed to choose that, but I think it was a very human response that she had. I don't fault her that much for having the response she did, but it obviously lacked emunah. But honestly, I don't know how many people would have the right kind of emunah if given that kind of tragedy. Yeah, multiple tragedies all at the same time. So I'm not gonna say very negative things about Job's wife. Okay, anyways, man was formed from the dust of the ground, while woman was fashioned from his side, symbolizing not inferiority, but a relational design and purpose. There is a midrash that says that Adam, when he was created, that he was androgynous. You don't have to believe this literally if you don't want. I think it's a very interesting idea, though. The midrash says that Adam was and it was androgynous. Androgynous means that you have both male and female reproductive organs. You're both male and female, not just one. Some people are born that way, yes. And that when it says that he took him from his side, what it's saying is that he split him in two. He split him in two, and now you have two sides, the female and the male. I think that's a beautiful midrash. I don't know if it's true, but I think the Hebrew can definitely mean that. I think the Hebrew allows for that interpretation to be a valid one. Not that we were come from his rib or, something like that, but that it's a midrash, but I think it could be definitely true. And that this is our spiritual state. Also, Kabbalah teaches, I think this is also another very beautiful midrash. Kabbalah also teaches that that Adam and Eve were also one soul. No, not just Adam and Eve, actually, that all of us were a soul, a single soul, and when we were not yet born. And then when we were born, your significant other was split from you. And that when you marry, it's like you find your soulmate again. You find the other part of your soul again. That's a Kabbalist belief. I don't know if soulmates are real, but this is a Jewish legend. I'm just telling you that this is a legend that exists in Judaism. I think it's very beautiful, isn't it? There's a lot of things in Kabbalah that are very beautiful.
You can't have someone for you in the plan of your life, then someone are.
Okay, so Shiloh just said that if it's true that Hashem has someone for you in your life, that it means that there are soul mates. So yes, in that sense, yeah, absolutely. There's a mate for my soul. We're not just husband and wife physically, but our souls are mated. Our souls are united. Okay, another comment. This is an interesting topic because a lot of people have comments. This is not normal for people to have so many comments.
I didn't want to say with the microphone, but some years ago, Ark and I, we were researching about our family tree, and we find out that our families
Oh yeah, I remember this.
has been like they were in contact like years and years and years ago. And the reason we discovered that it was like because they have kind of a shield was it was kind of similar. So we start reading, and we discovered that the pizarros and the sorillas, they were like one was serving the other. I don't remember which one it was. So we found that very interesting that years and years and years later that these two people meet, and then they find out that their family have met in the past, right? So it has to be like something, I don't know, like divine connection
Yeah.
about that.
So even your ancestors loved each other.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it sounds like cool. So that also make you realize that the so-called like love and this how I don't know, Disney and things want to paint it is kind of something different. It's like deeper. It's like more than that. And
It's not just about feelings.
yes, it's not just about just sexual feelings. I know there's kids here, but I have to say it the way it is. It's just more than that. It's more connection than that. It's more. There's a lot of things related to that. So when the time to choose your mate comes, like have in mind that there's so much around. Like there's so much connection that sometimes you don't know is not right there, but you can I don't know, investigate. That way you can create deeper bonds also. And that we are not here just because we only when things are cool and cool beans, but there's more that we have to honor, and there's more that we can, I don't know, discover.
Okay, beautiful. Lauren, did you want to say something also? All right. So Genesis, Bereshit 2:24 says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So this word cling, the root word is davak, okay? And it's also, there's another word called devikut. It means attachment, okay? And this is the same word that is used elsewhere where it says that we are to cling to God. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 22, it says, if you shall diligently keep all these commandments to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to cling to him. So, according to this verse, clinging to God has to do with walking in his ways and loving him. And when I thought about this, I thought, that's very interesting, because when you love your spouse, you also want to walk in each other's ways. You want to be with them, right? You want to do what they do. You want to do things to please them. You figure out, what kind of food do they like? What kind of music do they like? What kind of things do they want from me, right? Those are his ways, right? I have certain ways and he has certain ways. And part of marriage is learning what we each other like and maybe what we don't like from each other, and walking in those ways. I remember when as a Filipino, I have this thing where I always want to make people try my food, and so I used to, in the beginning of our marriage, I'd also always come on, try this food, please, and then he'd always say, no, I don't like bell peppers, or I don't like, whatever it is. And I always keep pressuring him. And he'd be like, this one day, he just had a serious conversation. And he's like, how come you always do this? I don't like bell peppers. They make my stomach hurt. How come you always try to force me to eat bell peppers? And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that he hated it so much that he did that for me. It was just part of my culture. So I'm like, okay, I need to just not my Filipino self and be like, okay, I respect you. You don't want to eat anything with bell peppers in it. Okay, I'll leave you alone. I had to learn his ways, right? And we're still, after, I know how long we've been married just by my oldest son. My oldest son is 21, right? So that means we're 22 years married, about roughly, because he was made in Hawaii on our honeymoon. And so after 21 years, we are still learning each other's ways. We still don't fully know each other. Knowing each other is not just intimacy physically, but it's also intimacy spiritually and emotionally. And also we change as people. Women change because of their hormones, but we also grow together. I was a different person when I was 25 years old, and who are here, however 20, if you're 20 or whatever, when you're 40 years old as well, when you're 30 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, maybe even just when you're 25 years old, you're going to be different. There's going to be different changes that you go through, different events in your life that make you grow and change. Some of the events in your life will make you bitter and harder and more closed sometimes. And some events in your life will make you more open and happy and joyful. And so life is a coaster, and you should never think your spouse, fully, at least. There's always going to be something to learn, and they can also change. I don't claim to fully know my children, and I don't fully claim to know my spouse. I don't think I even fully understand myself. That's why we have to pray for God to search us, right? And so if we are always changing, we always also need to exercise patience for each other in order to continue to cling to each other. It's very easy to cling to something that's stationary. It's not easy to cling to something that is organic and moving and changing constantly. And there's a rabbi I think it was a few days ago, who was saying, sometimes people, they say, you know what, we want a divorce. We've grown apart. And then he said, you know what, that means that you never grew together. You have to grow together. You have to open up to each other. You have to let each other know your weaknesses, your fears, your angers, your disappointments. Share with each other your joys, what you're grateful for, what you like, what you're happy about. And would say that if you only share your complaints, you will separate. If you mostly, let me change it. You have to share your complaints sometimes, but if you mostly share your complaints, then you will separate. You have to share more positive times and more positive words with each other than you do negative. There's an analogy that some psychologists or psychiatrists use called the love bank, right? Marriage is like a bank. It's like a bank. And every time you are nice to your spouse, do things for them, or kind to them, it's like depositing money into your bank. And then sometimes you get mad and you yell, or you do something mean, or you forget to do something nice, or you ignore them because you're so busy with something or something like that. It's like withdrawing money from that bank. And your spouse can do that for a time, but if you do it too much, if you withdraw too much, just like in your regular bank, then that's going to be very negative. And when it gets to negative, it'll go down even faster. It'll be like a whirlpool, going down. So you gotta invest. You gotta put in. You've got to try to be nice and sweet to each other, because you're not always going to be nice and sweet to each other. So you've got to make those deposits whenever you can. Okay. Now, also, many have said that the reason why the man is commanded to cling to his wife, and there is because in another place, it's stated more as a curse to Eve, where it says your desire to be for your husband. For her, it's a curse, and for him, it's just a commandment. So I don't know. I think that's really interesting. But basically, it's as if it's in a woman's nature to cling to their husband. And I think the way that we realize this is when we see these crazy examples of women who will be with men that are terrible, that are abusive, even in jail. They'll even marry someone who they met in jail doing ministry work or something, and then but men don't do that. Men don't go to prison to look for wives, or they wouldn't even think in prison. Most men, it's not a thing, So I think that there's something, I think this is the curse of the woman, where we, unfortunately aren't discriminating enough sometimes. But for the man, I think it's the opposite problem, where they're not attached enough to their wife, which is why Hashem has to command them, to do that. Anyways, okay. In Mishneh Torah Hilchot Ishut 50:19, Rambam writes that the sages commanded that a man should honor his wife more than himself, more than his own self. Again, here we see a difference, and love her as himself. And similarly, the wife is commanded to honor her husband exceedingly and to treat him with reverence. And I think that this is very interesting that, again, it says here that a man should honor his wife more than his own self, go above and beyond. And again, I think it also says the same thing, where it's almost more natural for a woman to give that kind of selfless love. We even do that. My husband is agreeing here with me. So, and we even do that for children. It's just more of in our nature to be self-sacrificial, which is why I believe even the Rambam says, you know what, you have to love her even more than your own self. And it says here that the wife is commanded to honor her husband exceedingly and treat him with reverence. And I do believe that is oftentimes the wife's problem, is to not revere her husband enough. So I think Rambam speaks to both male and female in their weaknesses, and says, hey, you have to do this and you have to do this. So now in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9-10, it says, two are better than one, for if one falls, the other will lift up his fellow. And so it's good to get married. It's very biblical. It's very interesting that in Christianity, it's almost seen as like it's an option to be single, it's okay. sometimes it's even encouraged, and because of something, that I think Paul says, like, if I stay single, I can serve God better or something like that, or more or something like that. That is actually, I'm not sure, that's one of the things I question, because that is a very un-Jewish idea. And, the whole idea that you're better single, that's so extremely un-Jewish.
Yeah.
You can't keep the first commandment, which is fruitful and multiply. And you can't fully reflect God's image if you don't have your, it's male and female, created he, them, And then Rabbi Akiva, here's another quote about marriage. Rabbi Akiva famously said, when husband and wife are worthy, even God says, they are my children. Now, of course, we're God's children, no matter whether we're worthy or not. But it's saying, I believe that this is what it's saying is God saying, I'm proud of them. Like, these are my children. When you want to show off your kids, these are my kids. But when we're not worthy, then it's like God is like almost ashamed of us, right? Almost embarrassed of us or something like that. Okay, now let's talk about how to prepare for marriage. It says that he who finds a wife has found goodness. You found goodness and has brought forth favor from God. God has given you favor. Okay, it's Proverbs 18:22. And weddings last only one day, and we take so much thought and preparation to prepare for that day. How much more must we prepare for marriage, which is more than a day? It's almost a lifetime, right? It's easier to prepare for a wedding than to prepare for a marriage, but only one of them lasts a lifetime. And marriage is avodah, okay? It's sacred work. Avodah, we use that word sometimes to mean worship. Avodah zarah is idolatry, right? It's foreign worship. But avodah, that word, it can also mean service. Sometimes it even means slavery, okay? But in this context, avodah, it's work, but it's sacred work because it is an institution that God ordained. So how can we prepare for marriage? Well, this is one preparation for marriage. When you study the Torah and the sages on topics of marriage, love, and responsibility. And I believe, if you're having any kind of problems in your life, whether it's problems in your marriage or problems with your children or problems in your work, you should be in your private time when you pray and then you study God's word, you can study on the topic, whatever the topic is, and ask and pray Hashem to give you insight on this specific topic and seek out these kinds of wisdom. Also, premarital counseling with a rabbi or a mentor, also trusted friends in your community. Just people who, and I really believe that you should not go to just one person. There's a Jewish, it's in Proverbs, but it's also interpreted a very specific way in the Talmud. It says that a wise man learns from all, okay? So gather wisdom, gather wisdom as if it's gold, gather wisdom where you can find it. I think I would really love to invite some of the elders of our congregation, if we could have like a panel discussion and just maybe impart some of our best wisdom to the youth in terms of what we have learned, what are the most important lessons that we've learned about love through our marriages and our life experiences. Also, just personal reflection and teshuvah will help you prepare for marriage. If you're planning to get married, it's the best time to not the best, but it's another excellent time to make sure your heart is clean and make sure you get rid of as much baggage as you can before you enter into marriage. And we're all going to have baggage. We're all going to have trauma that we went through from our parents, from our environment, from different experiences in life. And we want to make sure that we're not bringing that into our relationships. And our spouses are going to have baggage. They're going to have things. When I say baggage, I mean There's going to be things about them that you're not going to understand and that you're not going to know how to deal with. You're not going to know how to approach. And that will be your very job. That will be your very job when you get married, is to seek to understand what you don't understand, is to seek to carry a burden that you've never encountered before and learn how to do that and still stay together and still stay married and in love. This is the sacred work. When we talk about the sacred work, this is it. This is when you encounter all the obstacles, and the obstacles, it's going to come from each other's personalities. It's going to come from each other's relatives. It's going to come from each other's choices sometimes. It's going to come from each other's words. It's going to come from each other's actions. These will all provide obstacles in your marriage, and your sacred work is to help carry that luggage, work through them somehow. If it's too hard to bear, then that's when you go to prayer, you study, and you go to trusted friends and relatives. I've found that the best counselor. I'm not saying it's enough, because I've also had to talk to humans, but for me, one of the best counselors has been going to God in prayer and just crying and praying about it. And that's great therapy, and it's free. But sometimes, also wisdom from books, from people is also good. Also, immersion in a mikveh is something that both men and women do before marriage. Women have to do it by Jewish law. For men, it's more of a custom, but it's a strong custom, and it means renewal. Going into a mikveh, it stands for renewal, and coming out of the mikveh, it's like you're coming out as a newborn baby, and so you want to come into the marriage new, not with baggage, as much as possible. Also, there's separate celebrations that happen also before a wedding. Traditionally, for males, there's something called afruf. It's kind of like a bar mitzvah, where the Shabbat before the wedding, the groom is given an aliyah, and then we say mazel tov and we throw candy at him. And then also there's a kala party, it's like a bridal shower. And this can happen on Shabbat or the week before, or the week prior to the wedding. It's kind of like a bridal shower and like what's it called? Groom's party or something? Bachelor party. But it's more Torah centered. It's more Hashem centered, not, it's not supposed to be like some last fling where you do bad things. Anyways. And then also, how to prepare for a marriage is to make sure and ask each other these types of questions. This is not an exhaustive list. These are the types of questions you have to talk about. And there's a lot of people who just assume the best and don't talk about these things. And then after they get married or after they have a child, then they start talking about it. And I would say oftentimes it's a little too late, because had they known some of these answers, then maybe they wouldn't have married them. But it's too late, because the bond's already made. So, and be honest with each other. Don't hold back. And that's when you know that the other person really, truly loves you, is when you tell them the truth in your marriage and they accept you anyways. When you lie to each other, it's like saying, you don't really love me, because if you really knew me, you would not love me. Okay? This is not about anything in specific, just in general, okay? Truth will strengthen your marriage. It will strengthen your marriage. It will strengthen just you as a person. If you are a man of truth, a person of truth in general, you will be stronger. And Hashem will be with you. So truth is a very important principle to live by. Whether you're getting married or not, it will strengthen you as a person, and it will also strengthen your partner, your family, if you live and walk by truth, okay? All right, now let's talk about becoming one soul. And we talked about this a little bit already, actually quite a bit. Hasidic teachings talk about marriage as a reunion of the soul. Remember, I said about the Midrash, as two soul halves separated from birth. And then so the Zohar says that when a man marries, his soul is completed. And also in Kabbalah, the home becomes a mikdash me'at, meaning a miniature sanctuary. So this is, our home is not just a sanctuary because we open our doors on Shabbat because of, for Benei Avraham, our home is a sanctuary because we are married, and that's a holy institution. And that holy institution primarily resides in this home. So always treat your home as that, as a mini sanctuary. Remember that. It's the place where you should grow together in God, and that your children should grow together in God. It should be a place where people experience God when they come to visit you. Okay? So daily acts of kindness between spouses and between family members are like offerings on our altar of love in our mikdash me'at, in our mini sanctuary. And the ultimate goal of a Jewish marriage, this is the goal, is to build a bait ne'eman beYisrael, which means a faithful home in Israel, filled with Torah, mitzvot, and kindness, a place where the Shekhinah dwells. And this is light, right? We have individual lights, and then we have our marriage, which is another greater light than we could have shown by ourselves. And then we have everything that we do in our homes and in our communities. This is part of how we fulfill God's command to be light in the world. And Psalm 127, verse 1 says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. I was researching the different types of love that are mentioned in the Tanakh, in the Tanakh. And there are at least 6, I'm not saying these are all of it, but we have God's love for Israel, right? Which is covenant loyalty. And so the Jewish word for love is ahava, right? Ahava. That's my oldest daughter's Hebrew name. And so this root word ahava, it's used for God's love for Israel. It's also used to describe our love for God, okay? It's also used for romantic or marital love, meaning like physical desire, right? And also union, like a sexual union. It's also used to describe friendship love, okay? Between two good friends. It's also the same word that is used for love for strangers and others. And in that context, it's when we show compassion to our neighbor, right? And justice for our neighbor, not wanting him to be wronged, helping him in times of need. It's the same Hebrew word, but it's a different context, right? And then there's also the word for love in the Hebrew also is used to describe the wrong kind of love. Misplaced love, corruption, or lust, lusting after other gods, lusting after sin, etc. So, and also in modern Hebrew, when you say, like, I want a Coke, you say the same word, love. You could even translate that as, I love a Coke. I love a Coke. So that word is so it's used in so many different ways. And I was like, this is so strange, because what does love even really mean then? If it's used in so many different ways, what does it mean? And I found that the unifying theme for this word, if you could pick one synonym that would fit into all these different types of love, these 6 different types of love, what synonym would you say? What would you pick? Especially if you didn't see the slide that I accidentally showed.
I already saw it.
Which one? If you could pick one synonym that fit all 6 of these types of love, what would it be? So that's good that you didn't see the slides. Hesed. Hesed is loving kindness, and
It's different.
that I didn't see that necessarily, because you're not lovingly kind to something that you're lusting after. So that desire, maybe, let me see. Perhaps, I think that might be, yes. But we're called to love each other even when we don't want to, right? So that would contradict desire, right? Because we're supposed to love each other even if we don't want to, if we don't feel like it. So that's not desire, right? So the one thing that I think is the unifying theme is the word that we already said earlier, which is devak or devikut, which means attachment, which means cling, right? You should cling to the Lord your God and walk in his ways. I think this fits all of these 6 different types of love. Hashem is attached to us. He's attached to us. When we do wrong, he's still attached. He may punish us, but he's still attached to us, right? He's still loyal to us. He's still devoted to us. When we love God, that means we're trying to cling to him. We're trying to stay attached to him by keeping his commandments, walking in his ways. When we love our spouse, we want to be attached to them, right? Even if we don't want to be attached to them, if we are loyal, we still continue to be attached, right? We're like, oh, I'm really mad at you, but I'm not leaving you. I'm still going to attach myself to you, right? We'll even do that to our children, right? We're like, oh, you're making me really, really mad right now, but I'm still going to be here for you, right? You're still attached to them. Friendship love, right? You're attached to your friend, like you always want to be with them. You want to hang out with them. You're attached, right? Familially and also even physically, like you want to be with them. Love for strangers or others, when you love each other, you want to attach your soul to them somehow by showing them compassion or by helping them seek justice. You attach your will to theirs and saying, oh, if I were you, I wouldn't want that to happen. So I'm going to help you. You can even love a stranger in that way, right? Because you want to attach their problem. You want to attach yourself maybe to a stranger's problem. Oh, you see a homeless man on the street. How can you show love to them? Give them some food. You're attaching their need to to you, right? To your action. You can also attach someone that you don't know, a stranger, someone in need to the community, making them love the community by showing acts of kindness, perhaps. Connection, but not just a connection, an attached connection, a connection that you want to last, right? I think that is the difference. It's not just a connection. It's not fleeting. It's not fleeting. It's joining. It's really joining. And even when you are loving, so to speak, the wrong thing, let's say you're loving a fake false god. Let's say you're loving someone who it would be an adulterous relationship. If you love them, you're attaching yourself to them, right? You're attaching yourself to something that you should not be attached to, but that's love. That's love in the Hebrew word sense. And even if you're like, I love Coke, you're saying, oh, I'm attached to Coke. I want to have Coke like every lunch. It's like using the word addicted. It's almost like the word addicted, but that has a negative connotation. The word attached, it could be negative or positive, right? So devikut, it means to cling or adhere. And so this is, I think this is in the deepest sense what it means. It means more than just being close or being affectionate, because you can actually be mean to someone and still love them, right? You might just be being mean for a short time, but you really love them, or you're being mean because you're mad, but you still really love them, right? Because love is more than just a feeling. It's attachment. It's true attachment, devotion, which, yeah. All right. And it's just like in Genesis chapter 2:24, where it says that a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Devak. Okay, so get ready to be attached. Or make sure, if you're already married, then make sure you keep attached, right? And that means not just don't divorce, but that just means try to understand each other, try to see each other's good. That's a way where we can be attached, because if you attach yourself but always complain about the attachment, eventually you're going to want to detach, right? You have to find reasons why. You have to constantly find the reasons why you want to stay attached, because there are always going to be reasons on both sides, right? There are always going to be reasons of why you want to detach and attach. You got to focus on why you want to be attached in order to remain attached. Okay. Now I want to talk about the halachic wedding ceremony. Interesting story. When we got smicha, Reuben and I, from our Satmar rabbi, one thing he said to us is, don't do any Jewish weddings unless you know the laws for a Jewish wedding. And so this section of tonight's study is probably the most important part that we need to know.
What's interesting is we already did some before.
Yeah, he didn't know that we already did some Jewish weddings even before he gave us smicha, but we were under the guidance of
Another
other Orthodox rabbis, so it's okay. We didn't tell him that though.
Mhm.
Don't want to marry someone exactly like this.
Yes, Ziva said we don't want to marry someone exactly like us because just like magnets, we could repel each other. Yeah, for sure. Okay. It's part of we did marriage coaching, and I think we recommended to the Marriott. And I'm hoping that also my children will do that before they get married. There's a premarital part, aspect of it.
I think it's good anytime.
It's good anytime, Ruben said, where we took the things that we think that we didn't like about each other. Did they ask us to list out the things that we don't like about each other?
Mhm.
And so we listed out these things that we didn't like about each other. And then they told us why that they're like, what's the opposite of that character trait? Not the opposite, but how can that character trait
Positive.
be positive? And so we had to think about why that character trait can be, how it can be positive. And then when you think about that, then you actually remember, like, oh, this is why I actually fell in love with you. Like the reason why I fell in love with you is partly why I'm really mad at you right now. It's like almost like too much of it right now.
Yeah, sure.
So it was a really great exercise. Maybe if I can, we have the worksheet somewhere. Maybe I can share it with whoever. So, it was a really interesting exercise. Okay, so right now we're going to talk about Kiddushin and Nisuin. These are the two halachic parts of a wedding ceremony which make it valid. Okay, and without these two parts done correctly, the marriage can be invalid. And there's a nice quote here that says, with Kiddushin, we sanctify. Now, sanctify, remember, it just simply means setting apart. Now, since this video is going to go on YouTube, anyone who's humble enough to listen to it, even though a woman's voice is speaking, the reason I'm saying is part of what we want to do at Benei Avraham is do things according to Jewish law, do things halachically, and if you care about that, then this is going to be very important. I know that most in Messianic Judaism, they don't really care about these things, but if you do care, if you want to start caring, these things are very important. So with Kiddushin, we sanctify or we set apart. I thought of this analogy. It's kind of like when you go to the store, right? Kiddushin would be like when you say, oh, this is the what's something that guys like to buy? Nothing. Guys don't like to go shopping. A car. That's great. That's great. That's a great one. Okay. So when you go to the car lot and you say, this is the car that I want, and you know that this is the car that I want. That is when you say that, it's Kiddushin. There's nothing binding in American law, but it is in Jewish law, it's already binding. That statement, this is the car I want, that's already binding. Nisuin is like when you pay for the car, okay? And you also get a kind of receipt or contract that goes with it, and that would be the ketubah, okay? But in a halachic Jewish wedding, it's actually the Kiddushin, when you just state it and you say, this is what I'm going to buy. That's that first part that's binding. Okay. Now, so the first part is Kiddushin, which means the word Kiddushin literally means sanctification or setting something apart. And another word for Kiddushin is erusin. And this literally means betrothal, okay? But they describe the same exact ceremony. When the Zurias did it, and maybe they can remember, it's derived from the root kadosh, meaning to make holy or to set apart. And this act sets the bride apart exclusively for her husband. She legally becomes forbidden to all others, and the relationship gains sanctity under Jewish law. Unlike a modern engagement, right? Kiddushin is legally binding. Whether you have a ketubah or not, according to Jewish law, it's actually legally binding. An engagement in American law means nothing, right? If you can just say you're engaged and not engaged, and there's no consequence, right? Just saying it. But Kiddushin, if you say that you were betrothed to someone, it is legally binding. And our Breslev rabbi told us a story of a Jewish summer camp. He said that sometimes Jewish summer camps, because these children are they've hit puberty, so they're already attracted to each other, right? the men and women, the girls and boys are attracted to each other because they've already hit puberty sometimes. And so if it's a mixed camp, they won't sleep in the same camp, but sometimes they'll like do things with each other, you know. And he said that sometimes there's a problem because when they fall, let's say they have a crush or they fall in love, then sometimes they'll go off.
Will say something.
The boys will go take a girl and go off to a secluded room, and they'll give them something of value, and they have to perform halachic legal divorces because even though there's no ketubah, even though there's no ceremony, it's
Close to the marriage.
they've technically done kiddushin or erusin, and so sometimes they said they have to do mass divorces during Jewish summer camp. This is my Breslev rabbi story. I thought it was a very interesting story when he told us that. Okay, so anyways, this act sets apart the bride exclusively for her husband, and she becomes forbidden to everyone else, and the relationship gains sanctity under Jewish law. Oh, I already read that. Sorry about that. Okay. So, how is Kiddushin performed? First of all, the groom is supposed to give a simple ring to the bride. When I say simple, it's supposed to be plain. It's supposed to be just a gold or silver band, traditionally without any stones in it. And he's supposed to recite this statement: Hare et mekudeshet li betaba'at zo kedat Moshe v'Yisrael. Do you remember that statement being said? Okay, good.
That's what he said.
And it means, behold, you are betrothed to me with this ring in accordance with the law of Moses and Israel. This happens when they are already under the chuppah, okay? So it's during the wedding ceremony. And according to Orthodox Jewish law, 2 kosher witnesses must be present, and the bride must consent fully and consciously. She must not be under coercion. If it's found later that she was under coercion, then it also invalidates the wedding. Now, it used to be that Kiddushin, the first part, and Nisuin, the second part, which is the Sheva Brachot and other things, they used to be done about a year apart. And so originally, separate ceremonies, often held a year apart, was done to allow the groom time to prepare a home. And Kiddushin is legally binding, as I said earlier, and actually requires a get, a Jewish divorce, if broken, even before Nisuin. So even if you don't have a ketubah, if you do Kiddushin, it's still legally binding, and you still need a get, even if you don't have a ketubah, which sounds strange to me, but that's just how it works. But because of the risks of being apart for so long engagements created a lot of potential for impropriety, improper things happening, or also legal or halachic complications, such as, for example, a couple gets betrothed and then the man goes off to war or goes off to business, and then he doesn't come back for years. And because Kiddushin is binding, it's very hard for her to prove
To get a get.
to the community that she is not bound to him. So one way that Jews would get around this is they would right before a man would go to war or travel and on a long business trip, and if there was a chance that something might happen, he would issue a get. He would issue a divorce certificate before he left, not because they really wanted to get a divorce, but so that he could protect his wife from that being, in that kind of
Situation.
bad situation where she can't remarry and she has no means of providing for herself. That was something that was done because Kiddushin is so binding. So, but because of various problems such as this, in most countries where Jews have lived, the rabbinic solution was to no longer do Kiddushin and Nisuin separately, but to do them both together on the same day. And that's what we did recently for our most recent wedding. This provides clarity, modesty, and also
Unity.
unity. Okay. But there is an exception, however, which is in Muslim lands. In Muslim lands, as far as I know, even today, erusin is still done years. It could be even years. Women are betrothed even when or girls, I'll just say, girls are still betrothed even when they are not even hit puberty yet, even 11 years old and under. And the reason for this is because it's so that they can protect their girls from forced marriage or even abduction and rape by the Muslims that amongst which they live. So a halachic marriage made their girls off limits under both Jewish law and Islamic law. And this is one good reason for child marriage and polygamy. But it wasn't but there was no consummation. They didn't actually physically get together. They're only betrothed, basically promised to each other, but it was binding.
Like contract.
I have a question here. I don't know about that. I think it could be, but sometimes no.
Sometimes
no.
Don't
So the question was it
protecting a whole bunch of little girls under him, and then he writes a divorce, and then they get married. Like that.
Divorce? No, I don't know about the divorce. They wouldn't write a divorce if they wanted them to remain protected.
No, I mean when they're of age to get married and they find someone to marry them, I'm guessing the older guy would just give the little girl, or not a girl anymore.
No, not necessarily. Oftentimes they were just the culture that was very normal, and in an Islamic culture,
have many wives is normal.
Yeah, and also child marriage. So it wasn't we don't look at it the same way as we do here. So they would oftentimes just get married, and oftentimes it's someone that your family knew. It's not the Jewish community is close knit, in these types of events. Anyway, so this practice was done as a communal survival strategy, and it has preserved Jewish identity under external threats, such as in Muslim countries. It provided legal and financial protection for women and families and young children who were vulnerable due to war, captivity, or social instability, such as is the case when people, Jews especially, live under Sharia law. Okay, so traditionally, the wedding ring is supposed to be simple, and it's supposed to be simple, and it must be owned by the groom. So it should be smooth, not super fancy, and the bride's consent must be informed. She has to know, and it shouldn't be borrowed. It shouldn't be shared. It should be evident to all, very easily provable, that the ring belongs to the groom. It can't even be something that it's not even supposed to be, can't even be something that the groom already gave to the bride. It has to be that he is giving it to her on that day.
New, something new.
It doesn't have to be new. It can be,
given to her before.
but it has to be his. It has to be his. And so something that people have done, to kind of get around that, like let's say they are using their let's say they are using someone's ring, what I've seen done, I think wasn't this done at one of the weddings that we were at? is the groom will give a monetary amount to whoever the owner is, so that it's very plain to see that there was actually a transaction made, and then give it. And also that one concern that the sages had is that if the wedding ring was not plain, and if it had some elaborate stones in it or something like that, that the bride might be fooled into thinking that the groom was richer than he really was. This is especially important during that day when they did do like arranged marriages and things like that. But if it's very clear that the bride knows how much it really is worth, then I don't think, technically it's not really a problem because of that reason. But it wouldn't be normal, right? Also, so the groom must own the ring. Also, a plain ring symbolizes eternal love, honesty, and purity, the foundation of a sacred home. And our Breslov rabbi also teaches that it represents emunah shlema, complete faith, perfect faith, and it becomes a vessel of divine connection. Gold or silver is preferred. These metals are stable in value. They're also honored to be mentioned in the Bible, and they have a place in the Mishkan, right? And Kabbalistically, these metals are associated with important marital traits, chesed and gevurah. And chesed is loving kindness, and gevurah is strength, okay? Almost like opposites to each other. Coins are also valid. It doesn't have to be a ring, although that's what's most commonly used. You can also use a coin, silver or gold coin. But it's just that the groom has to own it, and he has to give it to the bride. Okay, and then the second part of a Jewish marriage that makes it halachically, it's important, halachically binding, is Nisuin. This is the second stage of the Jewish wedding, and it's derived from the Hebrew root word nasa, which means to lift. And this part completes the marriage ceremony, and it permits the couple to live together and share full conjugal rights and begin building a home together in holiness. So how is Nisuin performed? Usually, the couple stands beneath the chuppah. The chuppah is not a requirement, but it is the standard. And this chuppah, and Rabbi Reuven said this during the our last wedding that we had here, it symbolizes the new home that they're creating, the roof, open to heaven and surrounded by witnesses. And also not just witnesses, but surrounded, having our doors open to others, right? Also, the Sheva Brachot, or the 7 blessings, are recited over a cup of wine. This invokes joy, creation, Jerusalem, and redemption. This is not, now these elements, it's still valid whether or not you do them, but it's standard, like every Jewish wedding has it, right? Also, the ceremony often concludes with joy, singing, and the breaking of a glass, which is a remembrance of the destruction of the temple, even in our greatest joy. So we do something that is a little bit sad, which is break a glass, to remember that even though we're celebrating a joyous time, that there is still work to be done in Jerusalem and Israel. Our temple is destroyed. So until that gets rebuilt by Mashiach, we're probably going to keep that going with that tradition. The Jewish people are. And then the couple then enters a private room, and this part of the ceremony is called yichud. So the couple enters a private room together for a few quiet moments of seclusion as husband and wife. This is often their first time together as husband and wife alone. Okay, and this custom is more common in Ashkenazi communities and serves as a symbolic consummation. However, the majority of the Jewish world does it. There are more Jews who do it than don't do it. Okay, the majority of the Jewish world does it. Now, I want to just say some of the beauty and the benefits of yichud. Yichud offers the bride and groom a sacred moment to be alone, present with one another for the first time as husband and wife. I remember the last very strict Orthodox wedding that we went to, conducted by our Satmar rabbi in, Oklahoma. No, Arkansas. Was it
Mhm.
Arkansas?
Yeah,
Arkansas. It was interesting because the bride and groom were off by themselves, and they you don't have to be there long, but they were there for quite a bit, and we were just outside having fun. So it creates a dancing and yeah, doing other things and eating also. And we actually brought food to the bride and groom in their yichud room, and so they ate quietly together. So it creates a space of emotional intimacy and a time for quiet reflection before joining in the celebrations. I remember in my wedding, on my wedding day, I felt like I was just exhausted and stressed out the whole time, and that the whole thing was for everyone else and not for me. That's how I felt like. I think that if we had done yichud, that we would have had that little maybe half hour, an hour to just enjoy each other and be alone. And it honors the couple's new private status while reinforcing modesty and respect. It allows time to eat and rest, and also the bride changed into more. It allows time to eat and rest, especially if they did another custom, which is to fast until the actual wedding ceremony. And spiritually, it reflects the ideal of building a marriage grounded in privacy, peace, and connection, away from the crowd with a Shekhinah between them. And this very simple tradition is often, a lot of Jewish couples remember this part of the wedding as one of the most meaningful parts of the wedding experience. If for Ashkenazim, it is required. For non-Ashkenazim, it is minhag, but it can still be very beautiful, and any Jew can practice any minhag if they so choose. Now, ketubah is also a requirement, and it's supposed to be done before Nisuin. A valid ketubah must be written, signed, and ready before Nisuin. It's a halachic requirement, and it outlines the husband's obligations to his wife, not the other way around. Halakha forbids living together as husband and wife without a ketubah. It would be considered improper. It's only required before Nisuin, but it would be kind of, you don't have to do it before Kiddushin, but because we do it all together, it would kind of be a strange interruption in between the wedding. So it's usually done beforehand, before Kiddushin and Nisuin in modern times. It's usually signed before Kiddushin to avoid gaps during the ceremony. And the ketubah is usually signed privately beforehand with 2 kosher witnesses, not the whole big crowd. Although it could be, it doesn't matter how many people are there, but it's not normally part of the big public ceremony. And it's often read under the chuppah. It's also in Aramaic and usually read or chanted in Aramaic. And after the wedding, it is Aramaic. Why Aramaic? Because that was the lingua franca when halakha was being codified and written down in the days of the Talmud, after Yeshua's time, shortly after Yeshua's time. Can you switch it to a different language? A very strict Orthodox Jew would say no, but obviously we do read it in English. You can read it in both. Here, Hannah can read Aramaic, and she can read the whole ketubah. So it would be a blessing to have her here if she could do it. But if she can't, then for our purposes, we definitely just read it in English. But if you're in a very strict Orthodox community, definitely not. It has to be in Aramaic. Actually, even the Torah portion that we read every Shabbat, it's supposed to be read. The translation is supposed to be an Aramaic translation, not an English translation. They're supposed to be Hebrew, but the translation that's supposed to be read is supposed to be in Aramaic. So we are supposed to be at least bilingual as Jews. As American Jews, we are supposed to be at least trilingual, knowing Hebrew, Aramaic, and English. Okay, so halakha, the ketubah, no. After the wedding, it's given to the bride. So the ketubah is the bride's possession, and she should keep it in her home very safely in her possession. I frame mine. A lot of women frame theirs so that You know where it always is. It's right there where everyone can see. Because if you don't have a ketubah, then that's a serious problem according to Jewish law. Now, what makes a wedding halachically valid? And this is also a very important part of, if you're a rabbi or if you're officiating a Jewish wedding, this is a very important part. Couples have to be halachically permitted to each other, which means, number one, they must both be halachically Jewish. If a Jewish rabbi performs a wedding between a Jew and a non-Jew, he is violating Jewish law. They must not fall under any of the Torah's prohibited unions, like close relatives or a Kohen marrying a divorcee, etc. And if either was previously married to a Jew, they must have a valid get or Jewish divorce before remarrying. If they were married by another law, let's say American law, Jewish law, it's actually, according to Orthodox Judaism, they don't even recognize it. So I have seen two crazy examples. One of them, when we did our conversion, there was a Jewish woman from Canada. She had her and her husband both had Jewish ancestry, but they had no papers to prove it. And what he did was he converted under Jewish law, and he simply abandoned her. He never gave her a legal divorce under Canadian law. He just moved to Israel and he just married another woman, because Israel, as a Jew, they don't even recognize any other marriage that is not a halakhically valid Orthodox Jewish marriage. So she was still legally married. I think she had to dissolve it herself by Canadian law. But what I'm trying to say is that in Israel, the Orthodox rabbis there, they did not care about his former marriage, even though she says she was technically Jewish. She just didn't have any papers to prove it, and because she couldn't prove it, also they didn't count it, which was very sad. It was a very sad thing. She was very sad about it. Luckily, I told her when she told me her story, I said, Baruch Hashem, that didn't discourage you from pursuing Judaism, because she went to the conversion ceremony so that she could rededicate herself to Judaism as well. Right? There's another example, another crazy example that I know about. I have a friend in another foreign country, which I won't say because it could potentially identify her, and I don't really want to do that. But her story is that she was in an abusive marriage, and I don't know what kind of abuse it was. I don't think it was physical abuse. I think it was possibly a different kind. And so they both moved to the Jewish community. These are sad stories I'm telling, okay? They both moved to the Orthodox Jewish community and did their studies to convert to Judaism. And then they went on the day of their mikvah and Brit Milah or circumcision, whatever he did. Well, it was just Hatafat and Brit, of course. They were new Jews, right? And they're supposed to do a wedding ceremony, right? Because if you're converted, it's like you're new people. You're actually not allowed to be with each other according to Jewish law, because you're now Jews and you're not legally married to each other. So you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be married right away, as soon as possible, not go home with each other if that's the case. And what she did in order to divorce him is she just simply refused to do that wedding ceremony after remarriage, and so she just never got remarried, and that's how she kind of announced to her community that she wanted to divorce this guy. No one else knew. No one knew what she was going to do. Not her husband, not the rabbi, no one. And she just refused to basically remarry him the Jewish way. And so they eventually got a regular divorce. It's a sad story. I'm not judging her. I don't know what kind of relationship they had, but anyway, so these are things that are done. Sometimes people come to us for divorce and they're not Jewish, or they were not married under Jewish law. So it's like, well, we can't give you a get because you're not halakhically validly married as Jews. So it doesn't really matter, we're the wrong people to come to. Anyways, okay. Also, a wedding between people forbidden to marry is not valid, even if you do a valid Jewish wedding ceremony, if you're not allowed to be married in the first place and it's found out, then your marriage is invalid. It's annulled. Okay. And children from such a union may be considered mamzerim or halachically illegitimate, mamzers. I think we have a word like that in English. We call it bastard. Although that word bastard in English, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing as mamzerim, because there's a very specific definition for the word mamzer. Bastard is more loose, more general. Okay. Anyways, okay. Also, if the kiddushin is not performed properly, so if the groom, for example, gives the bride a ring that is not his, or lied about its value, or he didn't say the correct statement that he's supposed to say, or again, if the bride doesn't accept, unlike Islam, in Islam, it doesn't matter if the bride accepts or not. You're married, right? But Judaism, that's not the case. There's no forced marriages. And or for Ashkenazim, if the yichud is not performed, also it's invalid. The Sheva Barakot doesn't matter if it's not done, but it's proper to do it. So if certain parts, not any part, but if certain parts of these elements are missing, then it could be possibly, not necessarily, the marriage could be invalid, and the ceremony would have to be redone. Okay. Now, the witnesses and the officiant, according to Orthodox Judaism, Orthodox halakha, the witnesses must be halachically Jewish, male, which means they have to be halachically Jewish, male, and they have to be Torah and Shabbat observant. And being Shomer Shabbos is a huge thing in Orthodox Judaism. You can't be on a Beit Din for anything if you don't observe Shabbat. And so that is what we follow, or we try to follow at Benei Avraham, so that we can honor our rabbis who mentor us and guide us. They are Orthodox, Breslov and Modern Orthodox. Also, the witnesses who signed the ketubah, not talking about the rabbi who officiates the wedding. You don't even need a rabbi to officiate the wedding, actually. It can be anyone. But the people who sign the ketubah, they are not supposed to be related to the bride and groom or each other. So you can't have two witnesses who are brothers or father and son or anything like that. And if the witnesses are not valid, it could also invalidate a halachic marriage. And this is a common mistake in some modern weddings. Again, you don't have to have a rabbi, but a rabbi is important to make sure that it's done properly and according to Jewish law. Okay, that everything is kosher and valid. Okay, so this is just a summary of what I just said. What invalidates a Jewish wedding? Okay, more Jewish law, Jewish wedding calendar rules. Weddings that are permitted are typically, they fall from Sunday through Thursday. You know what time it is, by the way? I know it's getting, I don't want to go into all the time.
8:43.
8:43, we got time, good. Jewish weddings are typically done Sunday through Thursday. Usually Fridays are not done because it can cut into Shabbat. Also, Jewish weddings usually happen not in the morning, but later in the day and goes into the evening, especially the wedding reception and stuff like that. But it's okay. It is okay to do it on Friday as long as the ceremony is not done on Shabbat. So if the ceremony is done earlier, then it's okay for like the after party to go into Shabbat. But there could be still problems
People want to prepare for Shabbat.
if people want to prepare. Thank you. So most of the year is okay for weddings. Rosh Chodesh sometimes is prohibited to do weddings. It depends on your minhag. Hanukkah and Purim are sometimes it's encouraged to do a wedding on Hanukkah and Purim, actually. A costume wedding. Bracha wants a costume wedding. That is a fun idea. Okay. Weddings are prohibited. They cannot take place on Shabbat, Friday night through Saturday night. This is forbidden by Torah law because weddings involve writing, use of money, live instrumental music, etc., all of which are prohibited on Shabbat. Even a minimal ceremony without these would still violate the spirit of Shabbat. And you're giving something of value to someone that in and of itself, that's an essential part of the ceremony, right? And that in and of itself. So an important part of the ceremony, very much prohibited on Shabbat Because what you're actually saying is, the ceremony is all about, it's actually about purchasing a wife. You're giving money in exchange for your wife or something of value. So you're not supposed to buy and sell on Shabbat, right? It includes buying wives.
Well, buying a lot.
Like, oh, but if the late guy running after it is from
Sheila said that Boaz basically
Married.
bought Ruth because he had to take care of the land. He had to marry her to get the land. Yeah, technically that's true. Okay, so in Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13, it says, "Shall call the Sabbath a delight and honor it, not doing your own affairs." And certainly the wedding is all about the bride, right? So we can't do that on Shabbat. The bride of Shabbat is who or what?
Israel.
No, actually we call Shabbat the bride,
Oh.
right? Yeah. I call Shabbat the bride. Okay.
So your question was the answer.
Yeah.
It's Jeopardy.
Okay. So also weddings are not supposed to take place on Yom Tovim, the high holy days, according to Torah law. Same restrictions. The only work you can do is to eat, right? But some Sephardic communities do permit weddings on Chol HaMoed. That means, like, for example, the intermediary days between the days of unleavened bread or between the days of Sukkot, not the first and last, because those are Yom Tovs, right? Where no work is prohibited. But on the days on Chol HaMoed where work is prohibited, there are communities that do allow weddings on those days. Also, there's a very strong minhag that you're not supposed to get married on the fast days, including the 3 weeks and the 9 days. And it's especially important during the 9 days. And this is because most of Israel is supposed to be mourning over the destruction of the temple. And although we break the glass, that's only supposed to constitute a small part of the wedding ceremony. But we're supposed to be mourning the whole entire the time. So some avoid even earlier, starting from Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Also, there's a minhag that some people do, especially Ashkenazim, not to do weddings during the counting of the Omer, because they are mourning for Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students who were martyred. However, there's an exception of Lag BaOmer. That's the day when we do bonfires, because that's when the murder let up on the 33rd day. And so weddings are also, it's another special day when people do weddings on Lag BaOmer.
Isn't that when their wedding is planned?
Whose wedding?
Oh, no? It
No.
was a certain day. Not Lag BaOmer.
No.
But yeah, that's during, what time is it? That's more later in the spring.
It's near, their wedding is going to be near Purim, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, so other fast days also Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur, prohibited on specifically those, especially Yom Kippur, definitely prohibited by Torah law. That's Torah law for Yom Kippur. It's a Yom Tov. Okay. Of course, other forbidden marriages in Jewish law. You can't marry your mom, daughter, or sister. Can't marry your granddaughter, aunt, father's or mother's sister. Your daughter-in-law or stepmother. A man can't marry his brother's wife unless it's yibum, right? Unless it's to honor his deceased brother's childless widow. That's the only time. Also, one's wife's sister, while the wife is still living, even if you have a halachic divorce from her, you still can't marry her sister. You can't marry your wife's mother or your wife's daughter from a previous marriage. And if you're civilly married, these unions are halachically void. So even if you're married according to, let's say, American law, Judaism does not acknowledge it.
Some might be.
In American law, I don't know. I think some of them, yes, are allowed.
If you divorce the sister, you can marry the other sister.
Yeah.
There's stuff that in. Yeah, that's a little.
Yeah.
That's okay.
We don't do that here. We don't do that at Benei. Okay. Now, there's also intermarriage between a Jew and a non-Jew is not halakhically valid. Orthodox halakha is very clear: marriage between a Jew and a non-Jew is not valid according to Torah law, regardless of the formality of the ceremony. The Torah says, "You shall not intermarry with them, for they will turn your children away from following me." Now, this actually, hold on, I need to rewrite this. This is not actually true. This Torah commandment right here is actually talking about a very specific people, not all Gentiles. But rabbinically, the rabbis extended this to all non-Jews, okay? So it is Jewish law that Jews are not supposed to marry non-Jews. But it's Torah law. The principle is Torah-based though, right? Because if you marry someone that is outside of your faith, they will very likely turn your children away from following me. That's the reason why. And that happens all the time, right? When a Jew marries a non-Jew, they're probably not going to be observant. And that's the reason why. It's very practical, right? You can't continue shining the light of Torah if your spouse doesn't want that. Okay, it's very extremely hard. And if there is such a case, then you don't even need a get, because it's not a halakhically valid marriage. The union is considered a spiritual and communal rupture. And if the mother's Jewish, the children are Jewish. But if the mother is not Jewish, the children are not considered Jewish unless they undergo a halachic conversion. So Orthodox Judaism certainly views intermarriage as a serious threat to Judaism and Jewish law. Now, I want to say more about that later, but the children of a forbidden union, such as an intermarriage, it's not just a child born out of wedlock. In halakha, a mamzer is a child born from a Torah forbidden union, such as adultery or incest. Sorry, not the intermarriage, but adultery or incest. And the consequences is that if you're a mamzer, meaning that you come from an adulterous marriage or an incestuous relationship, then you can only marry another mamzer or a convert. And this status is hereditary, and it continues for all your generations, which is a sad thing. It doesn't stop.
All your children are moms there. You just
Because of yes. And the reason for this is because well, I mean, it corrupts the line, and it's just seen as a very serious sin. That they're not outcasted; they can still marry, they can still be part of the community, but they are marked. They're marked indefinitely. Okay?
they can't really marry. You only can marry certain. Limited.
They can marry, but not just can't marry just anyone. Okay.
Yes.
Also,
Marry many moms there's for them to marry, because they probably wouldn't want
well, they can marry converts though.
that. Yeah, I'm betting converts wouldn't want to marry them.
Deborah, I'm not sure. You know, you can look it up. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so she said I thought it would only pertain to the 10th generation. I may be wrong. The curse, maybe. Okay, I'm not, but that could be a separate thing. So don't quote me on that. I may be wrong on that. Okay, but no. Excuse me. Mamzers are not converts. They can be halakhically Jewish, but they would have to marry from a line of other mamzers. Okay, anyways. I mean, you become restricted kind of like the Levites, right? Levites are also, there's restrictions on Levites. So a Kohen is also, they're not supposed to marry a divorced woman or a convert, or a zona, which is someone who is who's had certain forbidden relations, and also a woman who underwent chalitza. That's the ceremony for the yibum ceremony, right? The when you marry someone,
The brother.
your widow's brother, that kind of woman. Also, a woman born from an improper Kohenic union, a halala. And so the consequences are that the marriage is valid but prohibited. And what that means is that if you do, so I've heard I've heard one example of this where a Kohen wanted to marry someone who they weren't supposed to marry. Like, I think it was a divorced woman in this example. He married a divorced woman, and the rabbi allowed it because they just really loved each other and they want to get married. So the rabbi said, okay, I'll marry you, but what that means is that you can never again serve as a Kohen. What that means today is that, when we do the Aaronic benediction, it's supposed to be a Kohen that comes up here. So if there's a Kohen in the congregation, we're supposed to give him that honor, okay?
They get the first aliyah,
They get the first aliyah. They also get the first aliyah, that's right. And so he can't take that privilege anymore. And when the temple gets rebuilt, which we are planning to get our temple rebuilt, right? It's prophesied in the Bible. He cannot serve in there anymore. And none of his children can either. It is also, again, another, like, it goes on forever. No. Huh? Where does it say in some cases?
He wrote in some cases at the end.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm not sure what the exceptions are. But yeah, okay. Yeah, there might be some exceptions, but I don't know what they are. Okay, in general, that they lose their Kohen status. All right, so also if you get married without a get and you were previously married, then you're still considered to your previous person or Jewish law, and the second marriage is automatically annulled, it's not valid. So any subsequent children may be considered mamzerim, meaning children from an adulterous relationship. And civil divorce is not good enough. If you're married under Jewish law, you should get a get under Jewish law. So these things in Jewish law are very important. Other prohibited cases are the Kohen Gadol is only supposed to marry a virgin, and the converts from certain nations, Moabite and Ammonite, they're supposed to be excluded from marrying into Israel. Now, this is not really applicable in most communities. Also, we don't really know who the actual Moabites and Ammonites are. Anyways, so some words about being a mamzer. A child from Torah prohibited unions, like an adulterous relationship or incest. It doesn't mean it's not necessarily due to being born outside of marriage or to a non-Jew, but they may marry a convert or another mamzer only. We already talked about that. But so there's community limitations. For example, they may be prevented also on aliyah. And so rabbis usually, they don't want to assume that, they usually Jewish communities err on the side of leniency as much as possible. We had a case here at Benei Avraham where there's a couple that wanted to get divorced and we didn't want to grant that status. So instead the Beit Din said, okay, we're just going to annul your marriage. They found a reason to annul the marriage. And then also a child of a Kohen and a woman so halal means that a child of a Kohen is a child of a Kohen and a woman is forbidden to him. And okay, we already kind of said most of this. Rambam, here's what I did want to say. Rambam says that being a mamzer is a status, but it's not a sin. You haven't sinned. It was your parents maybe that sinned, but you didn't. So you shouldn't. No one should look at you like there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. And so the halacha seeks leniencies when possible, and tries to protect holiness and lineages and not shame children. And the prophets speak of future healing and priestly restoration in Ezekiel 44 and Malachi 3. Also, there's other prohibited, okay, we already talked about this, other prohibited unions. And
Be careful. Mine says
talking about going home in the rain right now, sorry. Okay. Also, oh wait, sorry. So I want to talk more about interfaith marriage because this can be a really touchy subject. And we have friends that have come that are intermarried, or one wants to convert, another one doesn't, and things like that. And a true Jewish marriage is supposed to be, there's a purpose to it, right? It's to shine the light of Torah. It's to follow God's will for that union. and it's supposed to be between two Jews, whether by birth or conversion. And there are halachic requirements for a valid Jewish wedding. However, given all that, there are still a lot of biblical role models throughout, you know, all throughout that of interfaith couples who converted and joined the covenant. Sorry, that shouldn't say first. Who converted and joined the covenant, or maybe they didn't even necessarily. So, for example, Ruth, right? Ruth in Orthodox Judaism, her first marriage was illegitimate, right? Her first marriage, she was still a pagan. And we know that she's still pagan because her mother-in-law said, go back to your pagan family, right? That's how we know she was still pagan, even though she married a Jew. And it wasn't until, according to Orthodox Judaism, it wasn't until she said, your God is my God, your people are my people, I'll follow you wherever I go, that she made the declaration and said, I'm going to follow the Jewish people, not my pagan ways. I'm not going to go back to my pagan ways. I'm staying here. And so in Orthodox Judaism, she's considered a Jew, a convert. Now, Zipporah, she wasn't originally Jewish. And so it's debated in Judaism whether she was Jewish to begin with. And she was the one who circumcised their son. So the rabbis say that this is proof that that her heart was Jewish, even though also many say that there was no formal conversion process at that time, but her heart and her actions proved that her soul was Jewish. And Batya, also the Pharaoh's daughter who found Moshe in the river, she was pagan. You know, the sages say that she became Jewish, but there's no proof of that historically or in the Bible. That is only midrash.
And also, Joseph's wife too.
And Yosef's wife also.
But then, yet his sons were considered.
Yet her sons were considered Jewish. So, in order to raise a Jewish child, I do believe that you have to raise Jewish children. You have to get on board, you know, or it's going to be extremely difficult. So, it's said that conversion should not be based on romance alone. You shouldn't convert just to get married, you know. You should convert because you believe it's true. And the children's status follows the mother. So if the mother's Jewish, the children are Jewish. We already said that. If the father's Jewish, then according to Orthodox Judaism, they're not Jewish. They have to convert, although they may have Jewish ancestry. And you know, when that's the case, then there may be spiritual tensions. However, so moving forward, you know, if you grow up as a Jew and you are in this movement, you should do the right thing, you know, and you should marry a Jew. But, you know, let's say you were out in the world or you weren't Jewish until later, then you did what you did. Then you're like Moshe, and you're like Ruth's first husband, and you're like Yosef, right? Who married
Whoever's in the culture.
who married non-Jews, right? Because that's just what they had. Because Moshe, I think, Moshe ran away, right? Yosef was a slave in Egypt. He was completely detached from his family. And Ruth, her first husband, he was faithless and he moved out of the community of Israel. That's why he got married. So these are reasons why people intermarry. It's usually because of lack of faith or being in a secular or slave-like, position. And there's this thing, you know, in Christianity where we say missionary dating. You know, don't be a missionary dater, which means don't go for someone trying with the thought in mind like, oh, I'm going to convert them, because that may be your whole entire life. And then your children, you might have to be missionary parenting. So my children, because they grew up with a unified front, there's no question. You know, my children have no doubt. I'm Jewish and I want to be Jewish. There's nothing else for them. I don't think any of them can fathom any other way of life, right? It's natural to them, second nature. But if you have a split marriage, one is not, or if one is Jewish halachically, but they're not observant, they're very secular, you're going to have that same problem. And that missionary dating may turn into missionary parenting. So it's good to try to avoid that situation and just be light from the beginning instead of trying to be light to your family, being light together from the beginning. But if you're already in that situation, then I believe that, and this is the stance of Benei Avraham, because when we've counseled people who, one is Jewish and one is not, and things like that, then that is your mission. Your mission is to be light to your non-Jewish
Yeah.
spouse or family members in hopes that they will come to the light. And that's marriage is already hard in and of itself. So adding that extra responsibility, that just adds another really difficult layer of complexity to a very difficult sacred task as it is. So don't do it, but if you are already in that situation, this is your mission, right? But if separation is necessary, it should be handled with compassion and peace. It should be civil so that children can see that there is good in both sides, and you want to be more loving and more attractive than your non-Jewish spouse. And so therefore you want to not, cause a lot of strife and drama as much as possible to buffer, the other side, if possible. But if there's any kind of abuse going on, or if your spouse is, I'd say, prohibiting you from serving God, I mean, those are valid reasons to separate, especially if you're a Jew, especially if you've covenanted with God through the Torah. Then you're not. If you are a Jew and you marry a non-Jew, you're not even in a valid halachic marriage, anyways. Okay, I think that's really important to say because that's just how it is. Even the Brit Hadashah, it says, what fellowship does light have with darkness, right? Okay, anyways, finally, I'm going to close. I know this is a very long class. Finally, going to close. I want to say, and I just want to say a reminder that Kiddushin and Nisuin, the Jewish marriage, the Jewish wedding, it is a divine metaphor. At Mount Sinai, God entered a covenant with our nation. He did Kiddushin with us. He sanctified us to himself. And now we await the final redemption when God will ultimately marry Israel in a complete and eternal Nisuin. And this is when we will go to live with Hashem forever. As the prophet Hosea says, I will betroth you to me forever in righteousness, justice, kindness, and compassion.
Amen.
And that's it. Okay, thank you, everyone. And our next class, I'll try to make it not as long.